So today's speakers, we have Jun-Sung Kim, an industry-based expert advisor, currently with LG U+ as the Chief Data Officer, and Jonggung Lee, the Chief Visionary Officer from Hanwha Enterprises Blockchain Corporation. So some really excellent industry perspectives from today's speakers. And I'm Rosie Hicks, the CEO of the Australian Research Data Commons, and I've spent the last 20 years working in the provision of research infrastructure. So I am very, very focused on how we build and grow and optimize that interface between the university researcher and our industry partners. And why is this such an important topic? Wherever you are today, here with us in Korea, or across the world, we share the same challenges. Maybe they're not equally distributed, but food and energy security, health, water, these are all challenges that we face. So we apply our research efforts and resources to addressing these challenges. But unless we can translate the research, and there are different pathways to do that, unless we can translate that research, our efforts are in vain. So today, we're looking at the translation pathway from the university academic environment through to industry, how we build and nurture those collaborations. We're going to start with some presentations from our speakers, and then, this is a novelty in the hybrid environment, we're going to sit together on the stage for a really good discussion. So I'm looking forward to that. So to start us this morning, I'm going to hand over to Jun-Sung Kim. Thank you very much.
My name is Jung-Sun Kim. I'm in charge of data business planning at LGU+. It's a little bit strange having a offline meeting since the pandemic started about 2 years ago. It was a difficult time for everyone and all kinds of businesses. However, it was also a big chance for data accumulating and digital transformation. The topic I want to talk about today is using alternative data to make the world a better place. I'll focus on cases that are being conducted in Korea. The keyword big data appeared in Korea around November 2010. At that time, we started seeing the word cloud and big data first appeared in news and tech blogs. Since then, industries have made tremendous progress and technologies have rapidly developed over the 10 years. Now, data and AI technology are working as an enabler in all industries. Even 10 years ago, the word data came up with just tabular data consisting of number or character, such as survey or CRM-based statistics data. However, through the development of mobile networks, smartphone, and various types of devices, the type of data has diversified, and the amount has increased significantly, encouraging active user participation. Now we are living in the era of big data. But we must remember why CRM in the 19th it was so successful. It's because of that it was trying to understand customer with only the data they had. We were able to utilize the data from the customer who uses our service well. But we couldn't get any insight into potential customer or customers who left us. But now, data between different types of industry can be combined, making it possible to understand the characteristics of potential prospect and customer who left us. It opened up the door to the new world. So alternative data is not the specific data to certain field that has been collected in the traditional way. It is the data between different industry which could be used to provide better service to customers. By integrating and upgrading data sources in various fields, for example, the cleaning BBQ grill used in a restaurant is usually outsourced. For a cleaning company, the number of plates to be washed is just simple data that corresponds to sales. But from another point of view, it can be sales information of competing restaurants, as well as it could be indicate customer preference for the type of restaurants within a certain commercial area. Integrating and utilizing data from different sources is very important, and various uses of alternative data can make the world more efficient and rational. And in the way shown in the slide, 3V is the way for obtaining alternative data. Since the importance of integrated data has been realized, in Korea government act faster. In January 2020, through the revision of Act for Data, we usually call it Data 3 Act. It became possible to obtain, use, and combine personal data in the pseudonym of the hetero industry. In other words, the use of linking personal information between different industries has become by law. In my opinion, it is expected that the use of alternative data will be accelerated through the revision of by the law. To utilize personal data in pseudonyms, the following steps must be taken. First, prepare the necessary information for handling pseudonyms. Second, perform pseudonymization by measuring the risk of data. Third, review the appropriateness of the method and level of pseudonymization through internal and external experts. Lastly, follow with the management to safely control pseudonym information. When processing pseudonyms, it must be considered the possibility of identification does not exist. Although this progress requires additional time and resources, now we can obtain alternative data of much higher quality than before. As you can see here, alternative data could be various, such as public domain data, weather data, social media data, and so on. Based on this type data and range could be further expanded by additional and diverse combination through the process of collecting, analyzing, and integrating individuals' behavioral information on mobile. From now on, I will introduce a sort of case in Korea that utilizes telecommunication data. It's an example of using data from telco company in the financial sector. NH 농협 Bank in Korea introduced location-based service financial products by combining location identification service of mobile carrier. Using base stations installed across the country by mobile carriers to receive customers' movement line in real-time big data. NH provide additional interest rate for each region which are customized to customers. Next example is how credit rating agents use the telecommunication rate history data for credit evaluation. This is an example of improving credit evaluation and reducing risk by normalizing the current credit rating system centered on the financial transaction history using telecommunication information. If you see graph above, the graph on the left shows the distribution by grades of credit bureau, and the graph on the right shows the distribution of rating reflecting telecommunication fee history data. What is unusual about this is the top 20% of existing credit bureau fifth grade customer prove that they have better credit than the bottom 20% fourth grade customers. The next case is using location data of telco company for visitor counting. Information on visitors and audience to large concert hall, sports stadiums, and amusement park can be processed into demographic and residential area information. Data processed in this way can help advertising agency when establishing and promoting a similar concert plan. The data indicates, well, there was influx of visitors which could be targeted area to express advertisement. Second, a specific age group with a high rate of visitation which may require additional advertisement. This is a case of enhancing analysis of the effect by providing the result to advertiser. And this data can help plan a bus route to go back for visitor here. In the case of baseball game, it usually finishes at late night. Therefore, it's possible to establish dispatch plan consisting the departure point of visitor. Here is the utilization of logistics and career data. This can be used as an excellent alternative data for reasonable volume forecasting and inventory management, particularly for an island region such as Jeju. Inventory management according to regional characteristics may be more important. Periodic analysis of parcel item data can enable more efficient local inventory management. The figure above shows the delivery status data of Jeju Island. By using the increase and decrease of regional parcel delivery volume, together with the importance of each major item, we were able to predict the demands for each item in each residential district, including newly developed residential areas. This resulted in reduced logistic management cost and shorter delivery times. The following is an example of using the at-home index by telecommunication company for prioritizing maintenance of old water mains in Seoul in the public domain. According to the Seoul Water's business headquarters, as of the end of 2019, the number of water pipes that are more than 30 years old is about 1,768 kilometers. Of these, the 41 years old ones are about 129 kilometers. The problem is that they could not all be repaired within a short period. Therefore, the Seoul Metropolitan Government will improve the project efficiency by selecting the repairing area with a high at-home index over the population. The at-home index is data obtained by processing the index of each individual with a high percentage of remaining in their residence without moving through the location information of mobile carrier. Because of this, it was possible to provide safe water to residents within a very short period. This method could be extended to site selection for road construction, transportation, and civic facilities. So far, we take a look at some example of alternative data use case in Korea. It's my understanding is that many companies have growing concern regarding how to use various alternative data and apply for their business development. Although the value of individual data obtained from one area is limited, the value of integrated and combined data can be exponentially amplified. For example, the automatic remote method is used by the company only to increase the convenience of obtaining simple measurement data for gas consumption or electricity consumption. However, when combined with land use, bus route, weather, population movement, and public facility data, it can be utilized to create a completely different businesses, such as the smart grid, real estate forecast, site selection, and so on. Therefore, it's necessary to encourage the use of alternative data that amplifies the value by integrated and combined data. It can be also connected to the outside-in strategy of corporate management activities. For the international community to utilize variously integrated combined data, first, data sharing and collaboration between industry, academia, and government should be encouraged. To accelerate the sharing and combination of international data beyond the use of data within one country, there are few things to be completed before. It's important to prepare linked data or reference data for data analysis and utilization. Data that has been managed for other purposes is difficult to immediately utilize externally. Therefore, it's necessary to purify data and prepare metadata for this. Secondly, valuation of individual data for profit distribution must be reserved among users. No framework on how to justify the value of data is structured, and there is no market for data. Furthermore, it is important to develop policy for dealing with data for international trade and sharing will also be needed. When these reading problems are resolved, we could support better life with the value of data. As finishing the presentation today, I would like to tell you why Korea has no choice but to make good use of data. Korea is a country of historical records. The Republic of Korea has the most extensive archival heritage in East Asia, which is an encyclopedic record of 470 years of annals of the Joseon dynasty. It's a 12-story apartment building, and it would take 4 years to read it all if you can read 100 pages a day. A country that values records like this has no choice but to do well with data, especially if it is supported by world-class ICT infrastructure and ethnic characteristics. I hope that this event becomes an opportunity for international data exchange and utilization. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jun-sung. We are going to hold questions over until the discussion session. So I'll now hand to our second speaker, Jong-gung Lee, for the second presentation. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much for the introductions. My name is Jong-gun. Yes, I'm equally honored and thrilled to be here, and really excited to see and have a presentation in person after the global pandemics for the past 2 or 3 years. So I'm going to talk a bit more about reflecting my experiences about big data and alternative data set for a sustainable impact project for the past 5-10 years. And I think this is great. My presentation is linking with the previous presentations by the first speaker. To start, let me just briefly introduce myself, just to say I have different kind of experiences for the past, let's say, more than the decades or 2 decades. I'm trained by a computer scientist by training, but then my analysis was about people and social network analysis, taking some kind of the concept sociology. Afterwards, I work at a research center, but mostly working with the sociologists and economists. Then for some chance, I joined the UN, just at that time, just because, you know, I expect if I work for UN, I have a better chance to access different kind of the data set, because the initiations I work for 5 years, the UN Global Pulse is a kind of UNSG's, the Secretary General's initiative, working with all different kind of the UN agencies around the world, but making kind of the fruitful collaboration with private sector and academia. So a lot of the talk I'm going to talk and discuss with you reflects that experiences, followed by some other, you know, the UN and OECD and private sector experiences. But still, I'm work around, you know, the data and private sector data set for the society and impact projects. That's just one slide to say why I'm talking about these things. And the main contents I'm going to tell you today is more about, you know, what I learned from those experiences, and how we might be able to make a better collaboration between the industry and academia and researchers working on the analysis of the private sector data set, for instance. Just 2 quick questions to the audience. So could you please raise your hands if you are classifying yourself as academic researchers, please? Right. I say, student, who other people's, are you coming from industry? Or, right, what else? Okay, good. So I'm going to tell you about some 10 lessons learned from the data project for impact and social impact project initiative. Let's start the first. I think that this one is very aligned with the previous presentations, you know, the use of the alternative data set. You know, so for instance, the mobile data set, how we might be able to use for public purpose, or how social media data set can be used for other purposes. One important thing is, you know, basically private sector data set is not collected or gathered for their purposes. You should, you know, keep in mind that basically, you know, social media data set is just a amount of information of people's talkings in all different kind of the topic, right? So one of the project I did some years ago was with an hypothesis or an assumption that the people might talk about the market prices or the commodity prices even in Twitter. And we learned in Indonesia, people talk about many issues or the discussion points. In Twitter, sometimes politics or sometimes just humor or, you know, joking. But very interestingly, some people talk about, you know, commodity prices. People complain that today's the prices, they're rising up or going down, usually people don't talk about the price going down though. Whenever people realize, oh, it's a 10% increase or 20% increase, then they really complain in social media. So we capture that information from the Twitters, only the publicly available Twitter, in collaboration and partnership with the Twitters between the UN, and we developed kind of the models, a statistical model to nowcast and to produce the real-time information about, here's the beef and chicken and onion and the chili in Indonesia. So it was quite successful. So what I wanted to say is, private sector data set can be useful because the characteristics different from what you have in academia, that extensively or resource intensive wise collected and cleaned, but at the same time it has other downside, like so private sector data set is very dirty or unorganized, or even you don't know about the contents, so you need a lot of efforts and resources to clean up before you can use it for your purposes. So here's so that's useful, but it really requires a lot of resources. The second, though, is also related to one of the slides from the previous presenters. So she mentioned about individual data sets, and once that is combined with other types of information, then it can be used to produce much more bigger impact. For instance, connecting with my previous examples, I analyze the social media for nowcast the current prices in the markets from the secondary data set, but still we have some kind of information from statistical offices or people collected through, let's say, government officials or city governments or the provincial governments. So we don't need to ignore that information. We just, acknowledge what kind of limitation we have from each data set. That's really, really important. What kind of challenges and the limitations are existing there. Still, there are some other advantages. And you need to find out, how you combine those insights together to produce a better insight. For instance, here's a new data set, maybe from the social media or citizens contributed information, so combined with all the data sets from governments or statistical offices or other non-government organizations that collect data set, then it might be produces some better performance. Or some other people might say, okay, so quantitative data set is really, really good. Maybe that's organized or structures and you can easily analyze it, for instance. But still, only with the quantitative data set, we don't know why. People just can guess or can identify some tipping points or anomalies from the data set, but still people cannot answer why do people do that or why that happens in that moment. So quantitative data set might be able to give you some more timely information, but so the focus group interviews or qualitative data set can be produce some other thick insight. Or big data set, small data set, maybe similar. The fashions, big data set is huge. You can analyze and you can get some timely information, though small data set from FGI or FGD can give you more thick information. So we call it thick data set. So this is another thing, so try to use and diffuse the different kind of information you have to produce more insights. But yeah, obviously that is not easy, right? Because the big data sets, the granularity is different from the small data set, but you should spend also some time how you can combine, how you can find some kind of the R&R. So, the big data set is for this and the qualitative data set is for what, and then by combining all these kind of insight, what is the usability and the application, you can say. The third one, yes, maybe, I used to be a researcher in academia, and well, I've been writing some research papers, maybe 30, 40, but then, one of the things you might want to refresh yourself is, scientific papers is important, but some other people might not be interested in, like you, right? So they don't read your scientific papers, but they just need to read some magazines or some newspapers, and they might not have some chance to follow up what kind of the cutting edge researches are available. They are not reading those kind of the things, they only can read some plain text, etc., etc. So if you are pursuing some collaboration and partnership with the private sector, then they should, you need to keep in mind what kind of information they can consume or they can understand. And you know, so we try different kind of the form, like, you know, so in the middle, so this is really the scientific papers, including some equations, right, the deep learning or AI, but still we produce, for instance, the first one is policy brief for the politicians, and the second is more, you know, the practical working level people. So we had a number of the seminars every month to say, okay, this is available, and this is possible, this is potential. Still, these are the challenges. And you know, the other stories or newspapers. So you should, well, it's maintaining all different kind of the channels and the communications requires a lot of your resources though. But if you are specifically interested in, you know, partnership with different kind of sector areas, then you should need help. Well, the next one is, you know, so repeatables. I put it repeatable, but I want to say, you know, let's say the tens of years ago, the people do some research and write some papers, right? We own your data set, and the people's academias that didn't really publicize the data set, and at certain points the people started to share the data set for, you know, reproductions and you know, for other people to utilize your data set, etc., etc. But thanks to the technology now, there are a number of ways you can share the data set, not only just, you know, the uploading your Excel files in a website, but still you can utilize the, for instance, like APIs, applications, you know, platform interfaces, or even some people are trying to make some platforms where people can see the visual patterns or insights just out of the platform. But if someone can analyze some data sets in a country levels, the numbers or qualitative information, then they can do. So there are a number of ways you can collaborate with other academia or industries or even other partners. So try to find some proper way to share your insights, not only insight, but also your data set and making some collaborations. For instance, this is a platforms we developed with my team. And the one side that this is kind of platforms to show our results. But the another ways we make this platform, one of the reasons why we made this platform is people can add their data set into these platforms. In doing so, people know, you know, so what are the useful points of their data set by combining with others. So this is just one example though, but please keep in mind your research or data set or insights can be repeatable or reusable, and etc., etc. The next one is yes, everybody know, well, let's make another questions. If you're a researcher, then let's say some engineering backgrounds or engineering departments researchers, or social science or humanity. Okay, it's very strange. I will find, you know, the note really, and the persons really didn't raise your hands, okay? But yes, this is very obvious, not only for the engineering department, but also for sociology department, right? So when we talk about the human-centered design or ACD, that's really important, not only, you know, to understand our customers or the human beings, to frame or to understand, to make the right questions, or, you know, to find the right ways to produce the values or to provide the values into the people too. But even in engineering, nowadays we talked a lot about, you know, human in the loop, because AI is really the statistical models or statistical algorithms based on the learning data set. Okay, so I will give you a lot of data set and you can learn, I mean, you means the machine can learn from the data set. But the thing is, everybody knows, society changed or people's behavior changed. Certain models or a certain statistical model developed 5 years ago may be outdated already because society changed, the people behavior changes. People are not visiting anymore certain city areas, right? CBD or attractive areas can be changed by time over time. So, it's always, we need to engage with the peoples, to understand why the people did this one. And even to improve the AI or the accuracy of the AI models, human is really useful. Sometimes the machines or AI is quite dumb, but the human beings can do just the better in a quicker way and a better way. So always think about the humans. This is another thing, and well, just an example I put this one was I had a project in Southeast Asia to monitor people's discussion about natural disasters. So we developed, I think, so 10,000 different kind of the keywords in English, which is related to disaster, let's say flooding or earthquake or landsliding, etc., etc. But the thing is, in Southeast Asia, there are a number of the countries, and they all use different kind of languages. Even in Indonesia only, there are 300 the different kind of the local languages. So we cannot capture effectively all the dialogue or conversations, even in Twitter. So what we did was, simply we asked the people, could you please translate those kind of English languages into your local languages, Sundanese or Indonesians or Vietnamese local languages? And people really helped. Within I think, the 3.5 month times, we were able to get more than 2 million the feedback from the citizens. They really helped, this initiative. They just translate some of the keywords into their local languages. So what I'm saying is, ask the people. That's maybe sometimes the quicker way. This is the thing. It's the business models. I put that one 3 times though. Yes, the previous speakers talked about the private sector data sets. I used to work at private sector, right? So I used to work in the telecom, and I know much about the telecommunications data set in mobile operators. And I moved to UN to make the partnership with the mobile operator data sets. And because I know, how useful that information is for different kind of the use cases and purposes. But then, usually in the beginning, with the good willings, private sector is willing to help that initiative, but that's probably just 1 or 2 times, right? Asking them again and again, more data set, etc., without giving any, results or achievements or measurables, the results. This is really difficult. That's one of the main reasons why I moved to private sector again. Well, of course, I'm in and out between the public and private sector, but business model is really important. The business models does not need to be monetary exchanges sometimes. Yes, of course, as the first speaker said, we can collect, giving some money, right? Or we can buy some of the data sets, paying them. But still, we can find some good way to exchange the commodities, for instance, even in kind, or even just properly recognizing or acknowledging their contributions widely. This is another way around to make the good partnership with the private sector too. So just really think about, the business model. That's really important. And one of the examples in Korea I observed as a good examples was a partnership between the Korean statistic offices and the credit card company. Basically, credit card companies, they have the thick information about the people's the credit informations, but the statistical office wanted to have some aggregate levels of information from them. But so obviously they don't want it to buy or they don't want it to pay, and this is one of interesting observations when I met and discussed with different statistic offices in the world. Some people are happy to pay for the data set, but some people don't want to pay the data, but they only pay for processing the data set. So they literally not paying the data, but they are recognizing the efforts to produce the data set. There are different ways though, but you know, the Korean case, the Korean statistic offices, they share micro information they already have in their databases, which the visa or the credit card, the bureaus, they need, and the credit card, the companies just provide their information with the kind of with the statistic offices. This is really good way to exchange what they have already. So try to find some business models. That's really important. And yes, private sector partnership take a really, really long time. You know, I have my theory. You know, if I have a conversation with 100 private sector, then I can only make a follow-up the discussion with 10 companies. At the end, I only have one partnership. So that's my role, right? So with that, I talk a lot with the private sector. Likewise, making a private sector partnership is really, really difficult. Even when I work with the UN statistic offices, we try to make a partnership with the private sector. And even we had a dedicated team of people who only talk about the partnerships. You know, when we talk about partnerships, it involves MOUs or, you know, so roles and responsibilities. Someone needs to assess the risk levels, and we need to go through all the decisions making levels, you know, starting from, let's say, the CTO or a CSO and the CMO and CTO, right? Even making one partnership, it's going to take a lot of, you know, the efforts. And because of that, you know, even when I talk with the one private sector, whenever I talk to different people, then I'm going to use different languages, and I'm going to give them different kind of the values, right? If I'm talking with the CMO, then, well, let's say I'm trying to give some values about the marketing point of view, or technology and technology point of view, etc. And this one quite obvious, but you know, when I talk with academias, some people really talk about really the big thing first. But probably we need to discuss, you know, the small size of the data set. And with that, you need to show and say what kind of the values or what kind of the things you can make. Then you need to gradually need to talk about more bigger things and the bigger things. So just that is important. And also private sector point of view, you know, big things requires a lot of the decision-making process. They need to go through all the decision-making. But if you talked only about, you know, small things, that's just to say, okay, so I'll give you and I'll share you with the data set, etc. And the ninth ones before the 10th, the last one is to remember others are different from you. Even, you know, even among the research peoples, I had the chance to work with different disciplines, like as I mentioned, you know, sociology people is different, totally different from engineering people. Their really mindset is coming from the bottom up. But you know, sociology people or economists, they only talk about from the top, and then, you know, it's the middle and then down. So the ways they approach the problem is different, and the way they define the problem is different also. But then if you are talking about the private sector has their own KPIs, and they need to, you know, to integrate, and they need to translate every result into their monetary values or financial projections. So you need to know, you know, how can properly discuss with those kind of the people. That is really important, and you need to recognize you are different from others. And finally, you know, this is very interesting things. I mean, you even know what you want because you can be very high levels, and you may say, I want to do this one. If you just come down, then you might not have yet the clear ideas though. But you don't know, you know, what kind of information even the private sector have. So you should have a lot of time or a lot of efforts to understand them. The first of all, to define what you need clearly, and the second of all, you know, so you need to understand the other people's, like the private sector or other international organizations, they already have been doing and they already have now. Then so you need to find some collaboration from there. So that's the help. And just the final slide, you know, my current affiliation and organizations try to make our outcome aligned with the social impact or social aspect, because I truly believe, in doing so, we can make kind of the sustainability element for not only for the business, but also for the society. Thank you very much for your.
Yes, I expect you can. So I'll invite our two speakers to join me on the stage here. Wonderful. So we've had two wonderful talks this morning, and the topic of data-intensive research. Well, there were a few questions that we posed when we were putting this session together. And the first one, I think, is a very fundamental one. Does data-intensive research mean the same thing for researchers as it does for industry? So, Jun-Sung, would you like to kick us off with that? It should be on, yeah.
Yeah, I think that the way of manipulating data would be same, but actually it's not important sustainability for researchers in academic. So many data-driven studies are difficult to sustain after performance of the model has been documented. Meanwhile, from business standpoint, sustainability is paramount. To do that, we must consider iterative execution and definitely ROI issue. These days, startups are often created based on activity in academia. So I think that differences will be gradually diminished.
Thank you. And Jong-Gung.
Right. In short, yes or no, but yes, the data intensive, regardless of the sectoral areas, I think maybe it's in a high level same. But the private sectors or industries might take more seriously because that's business. They use the outcome, the data intensive HR, data intensive the research, data intensive decision making need to be aligned with some of financial the things. In that sense, maybe it's different. No, if I can say that way.
So I think the points that you're bringing up here, they're matched and reflected in one of the questions that we had on the platform that came from Isabel. So Isabel, thanks for that. The industry is driven by the search for the best return on investment, the highest impact, and as you say, Jun-Sung, the best possible sustainability. And I'll skip to the end of Isabel's point where she says it would be good if we could examine these boundaries. So what I'd like to ask is, what do you think are some of the barriers to creating those partnerships? I'll start with you, Jong-Gung. You did say the time that it took to establish a new partnership with a private sector organization. What should we be thinking about when we try and partner with an academic?
So you asked me, right? So yes, I already explained some of the things, but the barriers. The two things broadly. One's they don't know really each other's. The academia's what they want to have from the private sectors, or the private sectors they don't know what kind of things they can get from the public sector or the academia. This is really one thing. And the second, each party need to understand the other party. The academia should know how private sector work, how they are evaluated, what kind of information or what kind of the things they need to get out of a collaboration with the academia. So once you have better idea about that ones, you might have better partnership with the private sector, I think.
And Jun-Sung, would you like to add to that?
Well, there are so many barriers to working with academia researchers. I would like to point out two representative limitations. First of all, it is related to privacy issue. As you know, almost data, especially academic and industry both, are interesting. Data is human behavioral data. But when you try to use it, we always have to be concerned about related law. However, even with one project, there are too many related laws. Because I'm at the telecommunication company, there are hundreds of things to consider to using data. The fields, in addition to Personal Information Act, the Communication Network Protection Act, the Communication Secret Protection Act, and the Location Information Protection Act, and so on. As well as the other laws in the field, depending on the research. The most important part is the personal information cannot be used research purpose unless content is obtained. Although the law has been improved to allow the use of pseudonymous information to solve this problem, there are some insufficient parts. Second, when private company conduct industry-related project, most of them are conducted as national research project. But in the case of large enterprises, the matching fund issue arise. Since large company have to bear more than 50% of the total national subsidy, it's difficult to conduct industry university research unless there are expected results from the company's point of view. Yeah.
And I think that's a key point for us to consider. Now, I have seen some discussion in the chat. It has all been in Korean as far as I can tell. So I would just look to the organizers to let me know if there is a question to translate. Otherwise, we'll keep going here, but sing out and tell me if there is. Because I think following on from this, when we look at the challenges working with researchers and the various different legislative requirements that you've just mentioned here, Jong-gung, I'm going to throw to you. Is there a role for intermediaries between the research context and industry to help with that translation?
Yes, I think I just wanted to give a couple of examples. Once I gave the research dive. For instance, that's the initiative I organized for the 2 years. The format or the way it works, we as a kind of intermediary invited the research people and private sector and our international organizations to just work together and to know each other. So we put some research question there. Let's say this is financial inclusions and this is property reductions, and private sector put their data set, and some research people just bring their brains. And the international organizations and the governments that put some research questions. I need these kind of informations, and the private sector say, okay, this is the information we can give, and research people explore the data set to produce or to answer some of the questions. We spend 2.5 days all together, so they just worked overnight, and every day they presented their intermediate results, and everybody others just to give some feedback. By doing so, they know each other's. And so nowadays, one of maybe global trends is that there are some institutions to provide some training programs for research people or academia for private sectors, because there are some clear gaps, and the private sector might not have some enough capacity to train the research people to just start work on just one day. So the people from the academia spend, let's say, the 6 months or 1 year of the time in a separate entity, but with private sector data set, private sector informations, private sector is all the resources, and they train by themselves and ready to work with the private sector, and they start work with that. Maybe that's kind of the way or the trends I can observe. It's kind of the intermediary things. Does that help?
Thank you. Now, do we have, we're getting very close to the end of time, and in fact, I think we're probably just out of time. So we'll have to wrap up our questions here, but this morning we've looked at the use of data from the financial sector, from the public engineering works, from the sustainable development goals, and right down to the power of the data in how often you clean your barbecue grill. Who knew there was so much in that simple example? So I'd like to ask you all to join me in thanking today's fantastic speakers for a great session.